This is absurd. Try it again. I'm very sorry, ma'am. This membership is currently restricted. It all began with a wedding gift. My father, after retiring from the company he'd served for 30 years, combined his 401 payout with his entire life savings and presented me with a Chairman's Circle membership to the Sovereign Grand Hotel. But the person who used this card was never me. Out of 97 uses over 8 years, I had used it myself a grand total of 3 times. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, would host her alumni friends at the hotel's Michelin-starred restaurant, proudly boasting that it was our family's membership. The annual fee of $2,500, plus the usage charges that ran into thousands each year, were all automatically deducted from my bank account. If I ever tried to use it for myself, I'd be met with a sharp rebuke. Aren't you a little young to be indulging in such luxuries? The card, a symbol of my father's love, had become a tool to fuel my in-laws' vanity. And on the day I signed the divorce papers, I made a decision. In the hallway of the courthouse, I pulled the gleaming, gold-plated VIP card from my wallet and, with a pair of small scissors, slowly cut it in half. I then opened the hotel's app on my phone and tapped the deactivate membership button. It's over now. A week later, completely oblivious, Eleanor took 8 of her old college friends to that very same restaurant at the Sovereign Grand. What do you suppose happened in that room? Before we begin our story, if you could subscribe and like this channel, and perhaps leave a comment about where you're listening from, I'll send a little wish for happiness to find you there. It was a Saturday afternoon at the Sovereign Grand's rooftop restaurant. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a soft glow on the crisp, white tablecloths. 8 middle-aged women, dressed in expensive designer suits, were gathered around a large table, their laughter echoing as they finished their meal. That's when it happened. A staff member in a black suit approached their table, his expression strangely tense. "Excuse me, ma'am, I'm very sorry," he said, bowing his head slightly to the woman who held out the card. The air at the table froze. The woman who had presented the card, Eleanor, felt her face drain of color. Her lips began to tremble. Every eye at the table, and several from the tables nearby, turned to her. A heavy silence fell. Someone whispered, barely audibly, "What's going on? I thought the membership was in her name." At that single phrase, Eleanor's shoulders flinched. She couldn't bring herself to look up. This woman, who had always been the most confident and envied in her circle of friends, wanted nothing more than to disappear. What on earth had led to this moment? To understand, we have to go back 1 week. 1 week earlier, the New York County Family Court. Sarah stood before the filing window at the end of a long, sterile corridor. The papers in her hand trembled slightly. The weight of her 8-year marriage was contained in that thin stack of documents. "Please sign here," the clerk said in a monotone voice. Sarah slowly picked up the pen. She paused. 8 years flashed before her eyes like a movie reel. But then, the tip of the pen met the paper. She wrote her name, Sarah Elizabeth Parker, in clear, steady script. "All set," the clerk said, taking the documents. And that was it. An 8-year marriage, concluded with a signature that took mere seconds. Sarah found an empty bench in the courthouse lobby and sat down. For a long time, she just stared blankly at the ceiling. Her eyes welled up, then the tears subsided. She had already cried all the tears she had. It felt as if she were completely dry. She took her phone out of her purse and opened the Sovereign Grand's app. Her finger moved slowly across the screen until she reached the membership management page. There, in the center of the screen, was a bright yellow button, Deactivate, for authorized users. Without hesitation, she pressed it. Next, she navigated to the payment settings and canceled the automatic renewal. With each step, she took a screenshot, saving every confirmation. She created a new album on her phone named Evidence and methodically filed them away. Then, from a hidden pocket inside her purse, she retrieved something else. The gleaming, gold-plated Chairman's Circle membership card. She stared at it for a long moment. The hotel's elegant logo shimmered under the fluorescent lights. It was the very same card her father had given her 8 years ago. From her pencil case, Sarah took out a small pair of scissors. Slowly, very slowly, she began to cut the card. Snip, snip. The sound of tough plastic being severed echoed softly in the quiet lobby. Shards of gold plastic fell into her palm. She carefully collected the pieces and placed them in a clear plastic sleeve. "It's over now," she whispered to herself. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were firm. 8 years ago, the night before her wedding, they were in the living room of her childhood home. Her father called her over quietly. In his hand was a small, elegant envelope. Inside, the golden card gleamed. "Sarah," he said, his voice soft. "This is from my 401k and my life savings. It's what I put away after working at the factory for 30 years." Sarah looked up at her father's face. His eyes, etched with wrinkles, were misty. "I want you to be able to go to nice places, to eat well, to be treated with respect after you're married," he said, pressing the card into her hand. "This is all I can really give you, honey." It was a Chairman's Circle membership to one of the most exclusive hotels in the city. Initiation fee, $50,000. Annual dues, $2,500. A lifetime of my father's hard work, all condensed into a single piece of plastic. Sarah cried for a long time that night, tears of gratitude and guilt all mixed together. But after the wedding, reality was different. In 8 years, Sarah had used the hotel herself only a handful of times. Maybe 3, at most, yet the annual dues and usage fees were all paid for, year after year, from her account. The one who enjoyed the benefits wasn't Sarah. It was her mother-in-law's alumni gatherings, her father-in-law's business dinners, her husband's company parties. For 8 years, the membership in Sarah's name was used as if it belonged to her in-laws. Sitting on that bench in the courthouse, Sarah looked out the window. The late afternoon sun was beginning to set. A faint, bittersweet smile played on her lips. It was a smile of release. "I wonder what will happen at the hotel a week from now," she murmured to herself. "Eleanor probably still has no idea." Sarah slowly stood up, slung her purse over her shoulder, and walked out of the courthouse. The cool air brushed against her cheeks, but her steps felt lighter than they had in years. It was as if she had finally set down a heavy burden she'd been carrying for 8 years. Or more accurately, she was just beginning to set it down. The real beginning was still a week away. As she walked, she thought, 1 week from now, Saturday, the day of Eleanor's alumni lunch. It was at that very hotel. Sarah knew. She knew how excited her mother-in-law had been, planning this for weeks. She knew how much she'd been bragging about it in their group chat. But now, that membership was useless, because Sarah herself had deactivated it. She paused and looked up at the sky. The evening glow was painting the clouds in shades of crimson. "Dad," she whispered, "I'm taking it back now. It's mine, after all. You gave it to me." A gentle breeze blew past. As if in reply, Sarah started walking again. She didn't have a destination in mind. But one thing was certain. She was no longer someone's daughter-in-law, no longer someone's wife. She was just Sarah. And as she walked, she pictured the scene that would unfold at that restaurant in 1 week's time. And that day was approaching faster than anyone thought. At that same moment, in an upscale apartment on the Upper East Side, the atmosphere was entirely different. Eleanor was lounging on her sofa, scrolling through her phone, a smug smile spreading across her face. Her fingers tapped busily on the screen. It was her college alumni group chat. Eleanor sent a message. "Girls, how about next Saturday for lunch? Let's meet at the Sovereign Grand's VIP restaurant. It's our family membership, so I've booked us the best table with a view." Replies flooded in instantly. "Oh, Eleanor, you always know how to live. You're the most successful one of us all. I'm so jealous. It must be nice having a hotel membership like that. I heard their steak is to die for. I can't wait." Reading the replies, Eleanor puffed up with pride. Her smile stretched from ear to ear. This was why she loved these gatherings. The envy of her friends was more invigorating to her than any tonic. Eleanor got up and went to her bedroom, flinging open her closet doors. She scanned the rows of perfectly arranged designer suits. "What should I wear this time?" she mused, pulling out a classic navy Chanel suit. She held it up in front of the mirror, tilting her head. A look of satisfaction settled on her face. Yes, this is it. Elegant, but still makes a statement. She carefully placed the suit back on its hanger and opened a drawer, taking out a pearl necklace. She held it against her neck, admiring her reflection. Just 1 more week, she thought. I'll be the star of the show. In the living room, her husband, Richard, looked up from his Wall Street Journal. "Honey, about that membership." Eleanor poked her head out of the bedroom. "What about it? Are you sure it's all right? Now that Mark and Sarah are divorced." There was a hint of concern in Richard's voice. Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, please. It's fine. We've been using it for years. It's practically ours. But it's still in Sarah's name, isn't it? What does the name matter? We're the ones who've paid the annual dues all these years. What's she going to do about it? Eleanor's voice was filled with absolute conviction. There wasn't a shred of doubt. Richard looked at his wife for a moment, then nodded and returned his attention to the newspaper. He didn't press the issue. If she was that confident, what could possibly be the problem? But that was their delusion. The $2,500 in annual fees, which had been paid without fail every year for 8 years, had all come directly from Sarah's account. Her in-laws had never contributed a single cent. That evening, their son Mark's phone rang. It was his mother. "Mark, darling, I've made the reservation for the hotel next Saturday. It's for my alumni lunch. Could you do me a favor and reach out to Sarah?" "What? Why?" "Oh, just in case. Just to confirm there are no issues with the membership." "All right, Mom." Mark hung up and hesitated. It had only been a week since the divorce. Was it okay to contact her? But he couldn't refuse his mother's request. He sent Sarah a text. "Hey Sarah, it's Mark. My mom made a reservation at the hotel for next week. Just checking that it's all good, right? No issues with the membership?" After sending it, Mark waited for a reply. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10. No reply came. He could see the read receipt. He started to feel a flicker of anxiety. Why isn't she answering? But he didn't contact her again. He shrugged it off. What could possibly happen? He thought. At that moment, in Sarah's small apartment, Sarah was looking down at her phone screen. Mark's text was displayed there. A bitter smile touched her lips. They still don't get it. She didn't reply. Instead, she took a screenshot and saved it to her evidence folder. Better to keep a record, she thought. No telling what they'll say later. She put her phone down and opened her laptop, logging into her online banking portal. She pulled up her transaction history. 8 years of records spread across the screen. Every January, without fail, a withdrawal of $2,500 for the annual fee. Beyond that, there were charges for the restaurant, the spa, and occasionally, a hotel room. Sarah scrolled slowly, her eyes scanning the numbers. The annual fees alone came to $20,000. She opened a calculator. When she added up the restaurant, spa, and room charges, the total was close to $35,000. All of it had been withdrawn from her account. $35,000, she breathed. It was the hard-earned money she'd made as a freelance translator, working late into the night. It was a stark reminder of where all her effort had gone. Sarah opened a new Excel spreadsheet and began to organize the payment history by date, meticulously, not missing a single entry. The 15th of January 2016. Annual fee, $2,500. Tres. 21. 2007. Restaurant. 420. El 5 de octubre de 2016. Spa. $250. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as the numbers filled the cells. Outside, the sun was setting. Sarah clicked the print button. The printer whirred to life, spitting out pages filled with 8 years of payment history. She placed the papers into the same clear sleeve that held the shattered pieces of the membership card. This should be enough, she thought, placing the sleeve in a desk drawer. In 1 week, you'll all find out whose money it really was. Sarah leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. A storm of 8 years' worth of emotions swirled inside her. Anger, sorrow, emptiness, and, strangely, a sense of relief. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was hers. It was about taking back the gift her father had given her, with his life savings, a gift that, for 8 years, she had foolishly allowed to be used for someone else's party. It's time to end this, she thought, closing her eyes. Just 1 week. She just had to wait 1 week. And on that day, at her mother-in-law's alumni lunch, in that very restaurant, the truth would be revealed. They would finally understand that the luxuries they had taken for granted for 8 years were never, ever theirs to begin with. Sarah opened her eyes. The last rays of twilight were fading outside her window as darkness settled in, but inside, her heart felt brighter than it had in a long time. In the calm before the storm, Sarah quietly waited. Finally, that Saturday arrived. Eleanor woke up early, an hour before her usual time. She had tossed and turned all night, filled with the kind of giddy excitement a child feels before a field trip. She got out of bed and went to the bathroom, spending extra time on her skincare routine. Sitting at her vanity, she began to apply her makeup with a careful, steady hand. Today is a special day, she thought, applying a bold red lipstick. She put on the navy Chanel suit she'd picked out a week ago and stood before the full-length mirror, adjusting the fit. Then, she retrieved the pearl necklace from its case. As she fastened it around her neck, she felt her elegance amplified. She smiled at her reflection, satisfied. Perfect. At 11 a.m., she pushed through the revolving doors of the Sovereign Grand. A colossal crystal chandelier sparkled from the high ceiling, its light reflecting off the polished marble floors. Eleanor walked with her shoulders back, her posture impeccable. Her 7 friends were already gathered in the lobby. When they saw her, they waved. "Eleanor, over here." Eleanor approached them, a radiant smile on her face. "Oh, you're all here so early. Have you been waiting long?" "No, we just got here. We're so excited for today," one of them gushed. Her friends' eyes were full of admiration and envy. Eleanor preened under their gaze. "Well, let's have tea in the VIP lounge first. Their pastries are absolutely divine." "Wonderful." Her friends cheered. Eleanor led the way, her friends following behind, oohing and awing. "Look at Eleanor. She's really made it. I wish I had a membership like this." Her steps were full of confidence. This was a path she had walked countless times over the past 8 years. She could do it with her eyes closed. They arrived at the entrance to the VIP lounge. An attendant in a black suit stood by the elegant wooden doors. With a practiced motion, Eleanor opened her handbag, retrieved the golden membership card, and handed it to him. "A party of 8, she announced, her voice dripping with casual authority. The attendant took the card politely and swiped it at the terminal. A sharp beep sounded, but something was wrong. The attendant's expression tightened. He checked the screen, then swiped the card again. Another beep. Eleanor's brow furrowed slightly. "Is there a problem?" The attendant looked flustered. "Ma'am, could you please wait just a moment?" He took the card and made a quick phone call. His voice hushed as he confirmed something. A knot of anxiety began to form in Eleanor's stomach. She could hear her friends whispering behind her. "What's taking so long? Maybe a system error?" Eleanor forced a smile, trying to maintain her composure, but she could feel her fingertips growing cold. A moment later, a man who appeared to be a manager approached. "Ma'am, I do apologize for the inconvenience." "What is it?" Eleanor asked, her voice sharp. "I've been using this card for 8 years without a single issue." The senior manager spoke cautiously. "It appears there is a restriction on lounge access for this membership." "A restriction? What kind of restriction?" Eleanor's voice rose, her heart pounding. "I'm afraid the system does not provide further details." "My sincerest apologies." The manager's tone was polite, but his meaning was clear. They could not enter. Eleanor's face flushed a deep red. She could feel the stares of her friends burning into her back. To be humiliated like this, in front of friends she had known for decades. "Well, in that case, let's just head to the restaurant," Eleanor said, quickly trying to salvage the situation. "We can visit the lounge another time. It's lunchtime anyway." Her friends exchanged glances. They knew something was off, but no one dared to ask. Eleanor turned and started walking toward the restaurant, trying to calm her racing heart. "It must be a system glitch," she told herself. "The restaurant will be fine." But a cold dread was creeping up her spine. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As she walked down the long corridor, her mind raced. Could it be Sarah? The thought flickered, and she immediately dismissed it. No, impossible. Sarah wouldn't dare. She had been so quiet and compliant for 8 years. Divorce wouldn't suddenly make her do something like this. At least, that's what Eleanor wanted to believe. But the anxiety wouldn't go away. The sound of her friend's footsteps behind her seemed quieter now. They had definitely noticed something. Eleanor could feel a bead of sweat trickle down her back. Her expensive suit suddenly felt tight and suffocating. "Please, just let the restaurant be okay," she prayed silently. The entrance to the restaurant was just ahead. Eleanor took a deep breath, plastered another smile on her face, and pushed the door open. She couldn't show any weakness in front of her friends. But she had no idea. The real storm was just beginning. They reached the restaurant entrance. Eleanor took a deep breath and pushed the door open. To her relief, they were seated without any issues, guided to a prime table by the window. "What a magnificent view!" one of her friends exclaimed. The panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline was breathtaking. Eleanor's confidence began to return. The incident at the lounge must have been a simple system error. She reassured herself. "Everyone, please, sit," she said, pulling out a chair. "It's my treat today." Her friends beamed and took their seats. A waiter soon arrived with menus, with a familiar flourish. Eleanor opened hers. "The filet mignon here is the best." Let's all get the signature tasting menu. Sounds perfect. You know best. Eleanor. You order for us. Her friends chimed in, closing their menus. Eleanor nodded and signaled the waiter. The signature tasting menu for 8, please. And a bottle of the Sancerre. Right away, ma'am. The waiter replied with a bow. The appetizers arrived, followed by the soup, and then the main course. The perfectly seared steaks glistened on their plates. Her friends were effusive with their praise. Wow, this is absolutely delicious. You can really taste the quality at a place like this. Eleanor watched them with a look of deep satisfaction. This was the moment she lived for. The admiring glances, the chorus of praise. This was exactly what she wanted. Our family are regulars here, Eleanor said, raising her wine glass. The manager knows me by name. He always comes over to say hello. That's incredible, Eleanor. You truly are a class apart. Eleanor's shoulders lifted with pride. The meal proceeded flawlessly, all the way through to the exquisite dessert. Her friends leaned back in their chairs, patting their stomachs contentedly. That was a truly wonderful meal. Thank you, Eleanor. Oh, it was nothing. We must do this again soon. Eleanor dabbed her lips with her napkin. Everything was perfect. The awkward moment at the lounge was all but forgotten. But the real trial was yet to come. Eleanor stood up. I'll go take care of the bill. You all just relax here. Thank you, dear. She picked up her handbag and walked toward the cashier's desk. Her steps light. The bill for 8 tasting menus plus wine would likely be close to $500. But with her membership, there was nothing to worry about. She reached the counter and presented the golden card. I'd like to settle the bill. The staff member took the card and swiped it. Beep. His hand froze. He glanced at the screen, a frown creasing his brow. He tried again. Beep. The same sound. A jolt went through Eleanor's heart. It was the same thing that had happened at the lounge. Just a moment, ma'am, the staff member said, his face a mask of professional unease. He picked up the phone and made a call. Eleanor stood at the counter, waiting. Her hands started to shake. She could hear the low murmur of conversation from the restaurant behind her. A few moments later, the staff member hung up and looked at her. Ma'am, he began, his voice cautious. I'm very sorry, but this membership is currently restricted. The words hit Eleanor like a thunderclap. What did you say? She demanded, her voice rising. Heads at nearby tables began to turn in their direction. Restricted? What does that mean? I've used this card for 8 years without any problems. Her face was burning, a mixture of confusion and fury. The employee looked pained. We can only tell you what the system indicates, ma'am. For more details. What more details? Eleanor slammed her hand on the counter. The employee flinched. Just then, another figure approached. It was a middle-aged man in a tailored black suit with a gold name tag. The manager. Ma'am, please allow me to assist you, he said in a calm, low voice, gently guiding Eleanor to the side of the counter, away from the prying eyes of other diners. It was a gesture of discretion, but it was too late. Eleanor's friends had already risen from their table and were watching them. The manager lowered his voice even more. Ma'am, according to our membership terms and conditions, the primary account holder has requested that all usage be restricted. The primary account holder? Eleanor's eyes widened. Yes. For further details, we must ask you to contact the account holder directly. Who is the account holder? She pressed, her voice trembling. The manager bowed his head. I'm sorry, ma'am. Due to privacy regulations, I am not at liberty to disclose that information. But Eleanor already knew. She knew exactly who it was. Sarah. The name exploded in her mind. The membership her father-in-law had purchased for her when she married Mark. The name on the account had always been Sarah's. Eleanor had only ever been an authorized user. How dare she? Eleanor's hands began to shake violently, her face turning a deathly pale. Just then, she heard footsteps. Her friends were approaching. 7 pairs of eyes were fixed on her. Eleanor, what's wrong? One of them asked. Eleanor couldn't speak. Her lips just quivered. An awkward silence filled the air. Other patrons in the restaurant were now openly staring. Eleanor wished the marble floor would swallow her whole. Then, one of her friends, Jane, stepped forward. I'll get it, she said, pulling out her own credit card and handing it to the cashier. We can sort it out later, Eleanor. Jane's voice was calm, but it held a complex mix of emotions: embarrassment, awkwardness, and a flicker of pity. The cashier processed Jane's card. That will be $480. Beep. The payment went through. Eleanor couldn't lift her head. To be subjected to this kind of charity in front of the very friends she had spent a lifetime trying to impress. She, who had always been the most successful among them, was now the most pathetic. She heard a whisper from behind her. Wait, so it wasn't her card? I think it was her daughter-in-law's. I heard they got divorced. And after all that bragging, the whispers were like daggers in her back. A hot flush crept up her neck. I need to use the restroom. Eleanor managed to choke out, her voice barely audible. No one replied. Head down. She stumbled toward the restroom. She pushed the door open. Thankfully, it was empty. She stood before the sink and stared at her reflection. A stranger looked back at her. The makeup she had so painstakingly applied that morning was now smudged. Her lipstick was gone, and the lines around her eyes seemed deeper than ever. The pearl necklace seemed to mock her with its luster. She turned on the faucet, letting the cold water rush out. She cupped her hands and splashed water on her face. Calm down. You have to calm down. But tears started to stream down her cheeks. She couldn't stop them. Her shoulders began to heave with silent sobs. She covered her mouth with her hand to stifle the sound, but the gasps escaped. 8 years. For 8 long years, she had flaunted this membership at every opportunity. At every alumni lunch. At every social gathering. This hotel had been her stage. She had bathed in the envy of her friends. And it was all a lie. The membership belonged to her daughter-in-law. The money had come from her daughter-in-law. Eleanor had just been borrowing someone else's status, putting on a show. And today, the curtain had come crashing down. In front of her friends, in front of the hotel staff, in front of complete strangers. Eleanor looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were bloodshot, her nose red. Sarah. That girl. A wave of rage washed over her. But underneath it, she knew. She knew this wasn't Sarah's fault. It had been Sarah's to begin with. Eleanor turned off the water and dried her face with a paper towel. She took a deep breath. Her friends were waiting outside. She had no idea how to face them. But she couldn't hide in here forever. She squared her shoulders and pushed the restroom door open. She could hear the murmurs of her friends at the end of the hall. Slowly, she began to walk toward them. She knew that after today, nothing would ever be the same. That evening, the alumni group chat was buzzing. A friend who couldn't make the lunch was the first to ask, "Girls, how was the get-together today? Post some pictures." There was a long pause. "No," one replied. Usually, the chat would be flooded with photos of food and selfies. "Hello? Why is everyone so quiet? Did something happen?" Finally, someone responded. "It was a bit awkward today." What happened? Eleanor's membership card was declined. The chat exploded. Friends who hadn't been there logged on, firing off questions. Declined? What do you mean? The VIP membership she was always bragging about. A friend who was there posted the details. Yeah. When she went to pay at the restaurant, it didn't work. Turns out it was in her daughter-in-law's name. Her daughter-in-law's? Yes. It seems she canceled it after the divorce. Exclamations of shock and disbelief filled the chat. Oh my God. So all those years of her boasting about our family's membership, she was just showing off with someone else's card? Jane ended up paying the bill. $480. Wow. How embarrassing. The messages flew back and forth. A few minutes later, a system notification appeared. Is less than Eleanor. Richardson has left the group. Is greater than. She had left the group chat she had been a part of for over 50 years. At the same time, in the Richardsons' apartment, Eleanor had locked herself in her bedroom and hadn't come out. She had stormed in the moment she got home and hadn't made a sound since. In the living room, Richard paced back and forth. The image of his wife returning home, her face streaked with tears, was seared into his mind. "Eleanor, you need to eat something," Richard said, standing outside the bedroom door. There was no answer. "Honey?" Still nothing. He sighed and returned to the living room just as the front door opened. It was Mark. His face was grim. "Dad, where's Mom?" "She's in her room. She won't come out." Mark walked to the bedroom door. "Mom, it's me." Again, silence. He waited a moment, then came back to the living room. "Dad, what exactly happened today?" Richard sank onto the sofa. The hotel membership didn't work. In front of all her friends. "What? Why?" The account holder must have canceled it. "Sarah." Mark's face contorted with anger, his fists clenching. How could she? Even after a divorce, how could she do something like this? Richard shook his head. To be fair, Mark, it was always hers. We were just using it. Still, after letting us use it for 8 years without a word, to just cut it off like this. Mark's voice rose with indignation. He pulled out his phone and started typing a furious text to Sarah. Sarah, because of you, my mother was publicly humiliated today. Send. How could you do this? Send. We were family for 8 years. Have you no decency? Send. Mark sent the text and glared at his phone, waiting for the read receipt. 1 minute, 2-5. Nothing from Sarah. Why isn't she answering? Mark slammed his fist on the arm of the sofa. Calm down, son, Richard said. Getting worked up won't solve anything. Aren't you angry, Dad? Think of how embarrassed Mom must have been. Richard was silent for a moment, then spoke in a low voice. Of course, I'm angry. But we were in the wrong, too. What do you mean? Do you know who paid the annual fee for that membership all these years? Mark paused. Well, we did, didn't we? Richard shook his head. No, not once. It all came out of Sarah's bank account. A look of shock crossed Mark's face, but he quickly shook it off. Even so, this is wrong. She should have told us before canceling it, not just pull the rug out from under us like this. Richard sighed. Let's talk to a lawyer. Find out what our legal options are. Mark nodded. Yes, Dad. We can't just let this go. At that moment, in Sarah's small apartment, Sarah was looking at the series of texts from Mark. Publicly humiliated. How could you? No decency. She read them without any change in her expression. The angry words of the man who was once her husband no longer had any power over her. She didn't reply. Instead, she took a screenshot and saved it to a folder within her evidence album. This one titled In-Law Communications. Better to keep a record, she murmured. She put down her phone and opened her laptop. The Excel file, with 8 years of payment history, was still open. She created a new worksheet, entered today's date, and added a note. Post deactivation response from in-laws. 3 hostile texts from Mark. 2 missed calls. She was documenting everything. Sarah leaned back in her chair. Outside, the night sky was a starless black. She thought about the last 8 years. She remembered the first time she'd met her mother-in-law, who had said, now that you're family, what's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine. Sarah had believed her. She thought that's what families did they shared. But it was a one-way street. What was Sarah's became her in-laws. But what was theirs was never hers. The membership, a gift from her own father's life savings, was treated as their personal property, used for 8 years without a hint of gratitude or guilt. It's enough, Sarah said softly. No more. She closed her laptop, turned off the lights, and lay down in bed. She knew they wouldn't let this go. They would probably try to take legal action. But she wasn't afraid. She had every record. 8 years of payments, bank statements, hotel usage logs. It was all in her possession. Come at me, she thought, closing her eyes. I'm ready. The next morning, Eleanor finally emerged from her room. Her eyes were swollen from crying all night, but her expression was hard and determined. Richard and Mark were already in the living room. Did you call the lawyer? She asked, her voice hoarse. Richard nodded. We have a consultation this afternoon. Good. We can't let her get away with this. Eleanor sat on the sofa, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She can't do this to us. We were her family for 8 years. Don't worry, Mom, Mark said. There has to be a legal remedy. The 3 of them looked at each other, a shared resolve in their eyes. But they had no idea that Sarah was already 2 steps ahead of them, armed not with emotion, but with cold, hard proof. And they were about to learn that the law moves not on feelings, but on evidence. The storm was just beginning. A week after the hotel incident, Sarah's life had returned to its quiet rhythm. She made her morning coffee, opened her laptop, and began her translation work. Her routine, as a freelance translator, hadn't changed much since the divorce. Around 11 a.m., her doorbell rang. Puzzled, she went to the door. She wasn't expecting a delivery. The intercom showed a USPS mail carrier. Certified mail for Sarah Parker, he said when she opened the door. Need a signature. She signed the electronic pad, and he handed her a thick, heavy envelope. Thank you. She closed the door and examined the envelope. The return address caught her eye. Richardson and Finch, attorneys at law. Her eyes narrowed. It was finally here. Just as she'd expected, Sarah sat down on her sofa and took a deep breath before opening it. The tearing sound broke the silence. Inside was a multi-page document. The top read, in bold letters, cease and desist. She read through it carefully. The letter stated that their client, Mr. Richard Richardson, had been the beneficial user of the hotel membership for the past 8 years and had borne the financial responsibility for all annual dues and related costs. Therefore, he held equitable rights to the membership. It claimed Sarah's unilateral deactivation of the card was a violation of these rights and demanded she immediately reinstate access. It concluded with a threat of legal action if she failed to comply. After finishing the letter, Sarah just sat there, her face blank. Then, a short, sharp laugh escaped her. Ha! She set the letter down on the coffee table and shook her head. Borne the financial responsibility? A wry smile touched her lips. They haven't paid a dime in 8 years. Sarah went to her desk and pulled out the thick file she had meticulously prepared. She spread the contents on the table. The first document was a copy of her bank statements. With a highlighter, she had marked the relevant lines. Every January, a $2,500 withdrawal marked in yellow. The 15th of January 2016, $2,500 withdrawal, sovereign grand annual dues. The 14th of January 2017, $2,500 withdrawal, sovereign grand annual dues. The 13th of January 2018, $2,500 withdrawal, sovereign grand annual dues. 8 years of identical records. All from Sarah Parker's account. Richard Richardson, she mused. Funny, I don't see that name anywhere here. She turned the page. Credit card statements, hotel receipts, automatic payment confirmations, all in her name. There wasn't a single piece of paper to support their claim. Sarah picked up the lawyer's letter again. The more she read, the more absurd it seemed. The crux of their argument was that since they paid the fees, they had rights. It was a claim built on a complete fabrication. She took a pen and began to jot down notes in the margin. Rebuttal point. 1. No proof of fee payment. All payments documented from my account. Rebuttal point 2. Membership was gifted to me. Name on account since inception. No transfer of ownership ever occurred. Rebuttal point 3. Right of primary account holder to manage authorized users is stipulated in the hotel's terms and conditions. Her mind was clear. She picked up her phone and searched for civil litigation attorneys. After reviewing several firms, she found one with extensive experience in property and membership disputes. She dialed the number. Hanover and Sterling. How may I help you? Hello. I'd like to schedule a consultation. I've received a cease and desist letter regarding a membership dispute and need to formulate a response. Of course. Would this Thursday at 3 p.m. work for you? That's perfect. I have all the relevant documentation ready. After the call, Sarah looked out the window. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. She knew her in-laws would fight, but she never imagined their case would be this flimsy. It was a house of cards built on a lie they had told themselves for so long they started to believe it. In contrast, Sarah had 8 years of irrefutable, documented truth. In a courtroom, there was no contest. Threatening legal action with no evidence, she murmured. How reckless. She began to organize her documents, placing the cease and desist letter into the same clear sleeve with the shattered pieces of the gold card. Then, she opened a new document on her laptop and titled it Attorney Consultation Prep. She started typing, laying out the entire history in a clear, chronological narrative. The sun began to set as she finished. She printed the document and added it to her file. She was ready. A deep sigh escaped her. She was tired, but her heart felt light. Before the divorce, she never would have imagined herself in a legal battle with her in-laws. But now, she wasn't afraid, because the truth and the receipts to prove it was on her side. 2 days later, at 3 p.m., Sarah sat in a conference room at Hanover and Sterling. Her file was spread neatly on the polished mahogany table. The door opened and her lawyer, a sharp-looking man in his 50s named Mr. Evans, walked in. After introductions, he got straight to the point. Please, walk me through the situation. Sarah calmly explained everything, from her father's gift to the 8 years of her in-laws' exclusive use, and how she had paid for everything. She slid the bank statements across the table. As you can see, the $2,500 annual fee was withdrawn from my account every January without fail. Mr. Evans examined the documents meticulously. So, over 8 years, that's $20,000 in fees alone, not counting usage. And now, you've divorced and deactivated the card. He picked up the letter from their lawyer. After reading it, he set it down. Their entire case rests on the claim that they paid these fees, and are therefore the beneficial owners. That's right, Sarah said. But they never did. Mr. Evans leaned back. Let me be direct, Miss Parker. Their claim is legally untenable. To argue for equitable rights, they need proof of contribution. They have none. You, on the other hand, have a mountain of it. A wave of relief washed over Sarah. The fact that they used it frequently is irrelevant to ownership, the lawyer continued. If you let a friend borrow your car for 8 years, it doesn't make the car theirs. You are the registered owner, you paid for its upkeep, and you have every right to take your keys back. It was a simple, powerful analogy. As a next step, Mr. Evans advised, I suggest you request an official usage log from the hotel. A formal document showing who made the reservations and how each visit was paid for will make our position completely unassailable. Following the meeting, Sarah called the Sovereign Grand's concierge and, after verifying her identity as the primary account holder, requested the detailed 8-year history. That evening, a PDF arrived in her inbox. She opened it. The log was meticulously detailed. Total uses, 97. Her eyes scanned the reserved by column. Eleanor Richardson, 47 times. Mark Richardson, 38 times. Richard Richardson, 9 times. Sarah Parker, 3 times. A small, humorless laugh escaped her. Then she checked the payment method column. Every single line, all 97 of them, read the same. Paid via primary account holder, Sarah Parker credit card ending in 1,884. She created a new analysis chart in Excel, a simple table that told the whole story. Category details. Primary user in-laws, 94 times. Payer Sarah Parker, 97 times. Account holder Sarah Parker. The numbers laid bare the absurdity of the situation. She printed the chart and emailed all the new evidence to Mr. Evans, who replied, Excellent. I will begin drafting our response immediately. The battle was about to be joined, but Sarah knew the war was already won. A week later, a certified letter arrived at the Richardsons' apartment. It was the response from Hanover and Sterling. Richard opened it, his hands trembling slightly. Inside was a crisp, professional letter, followed by page after page of exhibits. The letter systematically dismantled their claims. It was followed by copies of bank statements, with the annual fees highlighted. Then came the official hotel usage log, detailing every visit. And finally, Sarah's damningly simple analysis chart. The conclusion was blunt. Their claim of financial contribution was demonstrably false, and Sarah's actions were a legally sound exercise of her rights as the sole account holder. Richard's face went white as a sheet. He handed the documents to Eleanor, who read them, her expression crumbling with each page. This can't be, she stammered, staring at the proof that they had never paid a cent. Richard's call to their lawyer was short. Frankly, Mr. Richardson, the lawyer said, their evidence is ironclad. To proceed would be a waste of your time and money. My advice is to drop it. In a last, desperate attempt, Eleanor suggested they sue for defamation, claiming Sarah had ruined her reputation among her friends. Their lawyer quickly shut that down. Truth is an absolute defense to defamation, Mrs. Richardson. Everything she would have told them is, according to these documents, true. That night, a heavy silence fell over the Richardson home. The fight was over. Their foundation of self-delusion had been shattered by an avalanche of facts. 8 years of borrowed prestige, gone in an instant. A month later, the legal threats had ceased. Sarah's life was quiet, but she was ready for a new chapter. She had a plan she'd been dreaming of, to leave New York and start fresh somewhere else. On a Saturday morning, Sarah stood in Penn Station with a one-way Amtrak ticket to Portland, Oregon. With just one suitcase and a carry-on bag, she boarded the train. As the train pulled out of the station, leaving the concrete canyons of Manhattan behind, she looked at the business plan in her lap, the sound of the Waves bookstore and cafe. The destination was a small, coastal town in Oregon. The plan was to open a small, independent bookstore and cafe on the ground floor, with a couple of guest rooms upstairs. Today, she was meeting the building's owner to sign the lease. The journey was a blur of changing landscapes and quiet reflection. She thought about her 8-year marriage, a period where her identity had been slowly eroded, where she was always Mark's wife or Eleanor's daughter-in-law. She thought about her father's gift and how she had finally honored his intentions by taking it back. Arriving in Oregon felt like breathing for the first time. The air was crisp and smelled of salt and pine. She rented a car and drove up the coast to a small town nestled between the forest and the sea. The building was perfect, a two-story structure with a large picture window facing the Pacific Ocean. She signed the lease, her hands steady as she wrote her name. For the first time, she had a space that was truly her own. 3 months later, the Sound of the Waves bookstore and cafe opened its doors. The inside was cozy, filled with the scent of fresh coffee and old books. The bookshelves were lined with her favorite novels, and from every seat, you could see the ocean. Locals and tourists began to trickle in, drawn by the warm atmosphere. Sarah brewed coffee, recommended books, and managed the reservations for her 2 guest house rooms upstairs, which were already booking up weeks in advance. In the quiet moments, she continued her translation work. She was busy, but it was a joyful, fulfilling kind of busy. Her best friend, Mia, came to visit for the grand opening. "You did it, Sarah," Mia said, her eyes shining with pride as she looked around the cafe. "You really did it. Look at you. You look happy." "I am," Sarah said, and she knew it was true. One evening, after the last customer had left, Sarah was cleaning up. She opened a drawer beneath the counter and took out the clear sleeve. Inside were the shattered pieces of the golden card. She looked at them for a long moment. They were a reminder of a life she had left behind, a life of silent compromises and stifled identity. She put the sleeve back in the drawer. It wasn't a trophy of revenge. It was a testament, a reminder to never again let her own worth be defined or used by others. She turned off the lights and stood by the large window, looking out at the moonlit ocean. The sound of the waves was a gentle, constant rhythm. What she had done wasn't some grand act of vengeance. It was simply an act of reclamation. She had taken back what was hers. For people who believe they are entitled to what belongs to others, simply having that privilege taken away is the most profound consequence of all. A soft smile touched Sarah's lips. She whispered into the quiet of the night, to the father who had given her the gift in the first place. "I'm doing okay, Dad. I'm finally living well." A breeze rustled the leaves outside, and the waves crashed on the shore. As if in reply, she turned and walked upstairs to her own small apartment above the store. A new day, filled with books, coffee, and the sound of the waves, was waiting. A life, finally and completely her own.